Hey, what's up guys and girls? Welcome back to the channel. It's Utah Johnny on a beautiful Monday, sunny afternoon. So I decided to break out the car, the last car I bought, my 1979 Trans Am. Now you guys remember it's been about 2 months since I've had the Trans Am home. You know, I had been looking for one of these cars for about 8 months. And so I found this one, just drove down to Las Vegas. I picked it up and brought it home. And of course, you know, like with every old car, once you get it home and you start to kind of tear it apart and examine things, I realized that there was a lot of little things with this car that needed to be done and done correctly. Not to knock any of the previous owners, there were some wonderful things done to this car. In fact, when I bought it, you know, nice big thick folder full of paperwork, $14,000 worth of engine rebuild, transmission rebuild, and so forth. So there was some money spent on it. But then there was also a lot of little shortcuts, like the wiring and the gauges and all the stuff that wasn't working. I came across and ended up just making it right. Now, as I mentioned, you know, the car, the foundation of it is wonderful. The paint was good. Engine and transmission had been worked over. This is the 79, which has the 403. And actually, it's an Oldsmobile engine. Pontiac did this in 1979. You know, I know amongst the purists, they don't really care for the Oldsmobile engine. I'm not that diehard. I just wanted a cool Trans Am to go and cruise with the T-tops off, and that's what I got. Let's talk about the business end of things first. As I mentioned, the Oldsmobile 403. So when I set out on this hunt, I wanted to specifically find a car that wasn't that much of a project. I wanted to kind of just find something that was decent and I could hop in it and just go cruising. I mean, this car is it now, but when I got it, like I said, some things needed to be done. The more I got into it, the more I started looking at some of the wiring, finding some really funky things. I needed to fix that stuff, and so I fell down that rabbit hole. Here you can see, these are some of the old parts. You have your cruise control unit, which explains why the speedometer cables weren't working. There's the speedometer cables. I mean, they were broken, and this unit wasn't hooked up. So yes, this is originally now I'm gonna keep that because it's probably worth a little something, especially because it belonged to this car. I had to tear apart the steering column 10 times. It started off with just the horn not working and the turn signal canceling cam here not working. As I got into the steering wheel, I discovered other issues. Steering wheel bearings. The bearings used in this 79 Firebird are the same bearings used in a lot of the newer stuff, and those little suckers are pricey. One little small bearing for the steering wheel I found at the Chevrolet dealership, 78 bucks. I mean, that's like Lamborghini Ferrari cost. When I got the car, it had this air cleaner on here, just a generic one. But if you look at the air cleaner, you know, these have what they call the shaker hoods. And I mean, those of you that know, the shaker hoods are cool. They're such a part of the Trans Am. This top part right here is actually held on to the engine. So when the engine revs, this assembly shakes and you can see it. Well, the guy I bought it from just had that assembly sitting on top of that air cleaner I showed you. And I ended up having to buy this special air cleaner base, 260 bucks for this guy, and it took over 5 weeks to get. And then just to complicate things even worse, the base of this shaker hood is a metal piece. You can barely see it here. The only way this will fit is if it's attached to that of a 400 engine. And as I said, this is the 403. So I had to go buy a different base and then wait another week for that to come. And as you can see here, this is the old base, which was too tall, So the shaker was kind of hitting against the hood, and it just wouldn't fit because it's a different diameter. And you know, let me just put that down. Everything on this car has been like a 2 or 3 step process. It's not just you can replace one thing and then it's fixed. No, you dive into something and then, you know, you find that something else is broken. So I'm ordering parts, and some of the things are, you know, a week or 2. I mean, the whole world doesn't operate like Amazon Prime. There's still some companies out there that are shipping regularly, and we have to wait a week or 2 or 3 or 4 to get parts. So a little frustrating. You know, like I said, it is what it is. Now, one other thing that I discovered is there was one gauge. One gauge that worked out of all of these. The tachometer didn't work. The temperature gauge, and granted, that's very important. That actually worked. The speedometer didn't work. The fuel gauge didn't work. And the voltometer was off. I had to buy a new component, a little digital board that goes in the back of that tachometer, and replace that. And then there was just a variety of sensors, like this oil pressure gauge. Somebody had installed a oil pressure sending unit, but it wasn't for the gauge. And there's a difference. There's an oil pressure sending unit that you can buy that's for the idiot light. You know, the one that just comes on when you have low oil pressure. Or there's this style for the gauge. You know, once I figure that out, that's great. But look how big that is. And that doesn't fit down in there. So I had to make this little extension, I guess, if you will. The alternator, I took that off because it was ugly, and I painted it. And then when I took it off, I realized the bearings were shot. So I ended up with one of these Pro Masters, which these are the bomb. If you haven't had one of those, they put out some serious amps. I think this is 150. So like when you have a heavy duty stereo or other things, it actually keeps up with the car. And of course you can see I did some wiring here, and yeah, that's a power cord for a heavy duty stereo. Speaking of stereo, it didn't have any stereo in it. So I ended up putting brand new speakers in the back. Of course, took that all out. You know, since I had it all out, I had to put some Dynamat down or equivalent. Ended up mounting a new Kenwood, and then as well as a 12-inch subwoofer in the trunk and an amplifier. Because with the T-tops off, you need a little extra power to blast that Def Leppard. Now, if you know your Trans Ams really well, has the special edition stripes on it. And yes, I put those on. This is not a special edition car. If it was, I would have paid a lot more money for it. In fact, this car was never black to begin with. It was gold, and it had tan interior. Pulled up the codes on this lovely VIN plate. Not a VIN plate, a body plate. And, you know, did some sleuthing online. I really wanted the Bandit look. And technically that's not even, well, it is. It's the Bandit 2, you know, the 79. Originally, the Bandit car was a 77, which really secretly was a 76, but they put the 77 front end on. Anyway, that's the look I wanted, so I put the stripes on it. So back to these crazy parts. I bought new center caps because those, you know, are just hammered. This ignition cover piece, one of the like 28 times that I had the steering column off, like, you know, that was right there by the keyhole. That looked like crap, so I ended up replacing that. This center console was just ugly, and that was even uglier. You had these old little ashtrays. You guys know how I feel about shift knobs. A lot of these vents, the vents were old and broken, and so I replaced those, and even the housings were broken. Little vents underneath the dash. I replaced my kick panels. So these are the kick panels with the 4x6 little mounting provisions to put some speakers in there. They come from a company in Nevada called Metro Sound, I believe. And again, I ordered those and they came, and guess what? They sent me 2 passenger side units. Like, what am I going to do with that? So I had to wait another week and a half. So another big thing with old cars is always the rubber seals. Somebody had replaced these rubber seals, but they didn't do it right. They just put them in They didn't glue them down. And then, like, in certain areas, they had to be, and that's not even correct that it's a screw, but I used a screw. You know, it should be a little push pin that holds these together. And then same thing with the doors on all the trim. I took the time, made it right, and look, evidence. You can see gold, the original gold paint. All the headlights I replaced. I mean, these are cheap glass halogen headlights that are old school, but they made such a difference because the old ones were peeling in the back. And look at this, it's brand new, and it already has a little bit of moisture in this high beam. So I got to replace that one again. You know, painted the trim rings. This emblem, I replaced that. The other one was missing. And yeah, I know, it should be red in the middle. That's actually an Esprit, which is a different Firebird model. But I like the gold because it matches the rest. These braces in the engine, they weren't here. I made those last week. I will eventually take out these inner fender wells and paint them. I mean, the engine doesn't look too bad. It's nice and clean, at least. So a few weeks ago, I took it out for the first time just to meet some buddies for coffee. And I stopped by the gas station. I filled it up with gas. Then when I got home, I had this strong smell of gas in the garage. Obviously something was leaking, and I figured it was probably the top sending unit that is like the pickup tube and also has the gauge component in it. But of course, to replace that, you have to drop the gas tank. You know, the tank looked original, so I ended up just buying a new gas tank. I'll show you that here. Replacing the gas tank, siphoning out 21 gallons of gas, and then disposing of it properly at the dump. I had to pay $30. That's like insult to injury. Well, at least 7 of it was brand new, 7 gallons. The rest of it was old. And then I had to pay to dispose it, but that's okay. I love the environment, and so that has to happen. Replace the gas tank. The gauge works now. And so it's got nice, fresh gasoline in it. The original build sheets on these cars were either placed above the gas tank or in the rear seat underneath the cushions. I found my build sheet, which has all the specs on every option that the car has, but also some employee at Pontiac had a little bit of a sense of humor, and they put an old bag of Lay's barbecue potato chips in between the build sheet and the gas tank and the body. I know it was there originally because I looked up some history on the Lay's bag, and it's from 1979. It was kind of cool. Alrighty, guys, thanks for hanging out with me on another episode of my 79 Trans Am. Hey, there's always a few things I gotta do. It's a work in progress. But I think right now, we just gotta hop in it and go for a cruise. So give me a like, and we'll catch you next time. You guys take care.